Good evening. We're going to open the meeting for the City of Walker Planning Commission for August 17. Next item on the agenda, the review of the meeting minutes from the August 3, 2022 meeting. Any comments, questions, or a motion to accept the minutes?
Motion to accept.
Support.
Okay, motion by Scott, supported by Joe to approve the minutes from August 3. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Next item is general public comment. So we've got several items on our agenda, but if you would wish to speak to something that's not on the agenda, concerns that you have or issues within the city right now, this is an opportunity to come forward and share your thoughts. Seeing no takers, we'll move into the first agenda item, case number 22-024. This is a public hearing. It's a final area site plan for a project on Northridge Drive. We'll turn it over to Tricia Anderson, our planning director, to introduce the project.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to sit this one out.
All right. Thank you. So Jason is sitting out for this particular project.
Thanks, Terry. So we have Transport Properties back with us. You recently saw them for the update to the FASP to allow the truck terminal use, and now they're back for requesting the final area site plan review. So the action requested by the Planning Commission tonight is to review the FASP for a 284 space truck trailer storage lot on lots I-5, I-6, and I-7 of the Walkerview IPUD, and to grant approval with or without conditions or tabling of the request. So this site again is located at 1920 Northridge Drive, part of the Walkerview IPUD. It's roughly 25.63 acres. And the future land use designation is Enterprise within the Northwest Neighborhood Cluster. And this is near the southeast corner of Northridge Drive and Walker Avenue intersection. And we have Justin Longstreth with Bruggink here on behalf of the owner, Transport Properties, which it looks like there's some folks from Transport Properties with us tonight. So just a recap of which parcel this is. I know we've kind of been doing a lot with the Walkerview PUD lately. So those three industrial lots make up this area shown in red here. So lots I-5, I-6, and I-7. And so what the update to the FASP did was allowed for this use. So if you recall, I had the recommendation to, instead of opening the door to all MH uses, so truck terminal is one of those uses that's permitted in the heavy industry or MH district. So instead of opening the door to all of that could come with heavy industry, we said, okay, let's just narrow it down to just truck terminals. So that would allow the use here. And so they've provided us with an updated FASP. So just showing you this here with those updates. And so here's the site plan. It's pretty straightforward. It's a parking lot, and it's for trucks, trailers, Transport Properties. Folks are probably going to talk a little bit more about that use, but if you remember from when they were here before, they talked about how they lease space for different companies for their fleet vehicles, for buses, or other big trucks or trailers or pieces of heavy equipment. And so I'm just going to go through the proposed improvements here. So the parking lot itself is 7.89 acres. They're proposing 284 trailer storage spaces. They're also proposing a white vinyl privacy fence on the Northridge Drive frontage, which will do pretty well with screening the use from adjacent properties. And then they're also planning to fence in the entire perimeter of the parking lot with a 6-foot vinyl coated chain link fence. We requested at site plan review committee meeting that they probably should have a dumpster, and so they are proposing a dumpster here with a concrete enclosure. And they'll be having a 9 by 15 foot guard shack right there at the entrance in the Boulevard entrance drive. And so the entrance is arm gated and so is the exit. And it's my understanding that there will be a Knox box on the gate. And then all the spots are lined with this 10-foot wide reinforced concrete dolly pad. And it's my understanding just to protect the other like asphalt surface so that their heavy equipment or trucks or trailers don't kind of sink into it to wreck their parking lot. They're also proposing some modular brick retaining walls along some of those steep slopes on the site. They've got lighting and they've got quite a bit of landscaping for just a parking lot. And they've got some landscaped islands that also include some rain gardens, which I assume are part of the stormwater management and stormwater management facilities. And then they're proposing a 12 by 6 monument sign. So that's quite a bit bigger than what we normally see. So I said, if you wanted to ask for a larger sign as a PUD benefit, just you can throw it out there and see if it sticks. So that's what's being proposed here. The applicant has addressed mainly almost all of the items that we went through with the site plan review committee meeting. One of the items that's kind of a big deal is the location of the driveway. So we want to make sure that their driveway is aligned with the Kent County Road Commission Central Complex driveway directly on the other side of Northridge. And so we didn't see the location of that driveway on the revised plans, but we've been assured by the applicant that they can revise them to include that. And if their driveway where it's shown on the plan now isn't aligned, that they can move it over. And staff is asking for the discretion to allow staff to review and approve that change if it's needed. So I'm recommending that the Planning Commission approve the FASP for transport properties, subject to all the conditions listed here and in my report. I should mention that number 3, I talked to Scott about this and whether a specific rain garden maintenance agreement would be required, and he said it would be covered under the stormwater maintenance agreement. So I'm okay with that, and if you wanted to remove that condition, the first one where it asks the applicant to address all the items outlined in the city engineer's report, that should cover that one. That's it for me.
Thank you, Tricia. Any questions for Tricia on this aspect of it? Okay.
What's a rain garden?
So a rain garden is a depression in the ground that's graded at a certain slope, and it's got a certain layering of substrate and materials, and then it has specific plants in it to absorb water. We have our engineer here also to weigh in on any stormwater.
You're doing great.
That's basically what it is.
Okay, thank you.
That's why it could fall under stormwater.
All right, now we'll turn to Scott Connors, our city engineer.
Okay, just a handful of comments today. Tricia covered the driveway issue. The reason this is kind of a bigger deal is because we allowed the Kent County driveway to be constructed, or at least the first section of curb, when Northridge went in. And we said, this is a bad idea. We always end up changing these things. We never get it right the first time. And they said, no, we got this. And then, so I think that's what was surveyed and picked up. Then they came out there and said, you're right, that'll never work. And they had to pull it out and put a new one in. So we have to make sure that we got the actual new one in, and I've talked to Justin about this, and he's comfortable with the recommendation in my report that basically just says, we request the discretion be left to the city engineer for any modifications after planning commission review. So we're all in agreement on that. Couple other quick ones. All of this stormwater goes down to the southwest part of the site, and then to the detention pond that's downslope from there. We'd like to see at least a 6-inch curb around that entire section, just to make sure that, you know, sometimes when you put those little 3-inch bituminous curbs in, it can be 2 inches here, 4 inches here, 1 inch there. You know, if you see something that's molded as a 6-inch curb, you're getting 6 inches. And we know that that's going to be a big help when you see a lot of rainfall out here. So we want to make sure that we do have at least 6 inches. We'd love to have a whole lot more, but I think that's a fair number. And then lastly, the curb detail on their plan. I don't want to bore you too much with this, but we've got a residential curb, and then we've got a commercial industrial curb, and the commercial industrial one's a little bit bigger. And I think the detail they have is for the residential. And if they want to build the smaller curb on their own site, that's fine. But in the driveway, we want to make sure that it's denoted that, you know, we don't have to send our inspectors out there and find out that they poured the residential curb, and then everybody says, well, can I please just let this lay? And, you know, we're going to say no, because it's going to crack and break prematurely. So we want to make sure that's covered. And that is it.
Okay, Scott, any questions for Scott on his comments? Okay. At this point, we'll turn to the applicant. Is there anything that you'd like to present at this point?
Good evening, Justin Longstreth with Bruggink. I don't have a lot to add other than just to reiterate that we've read staff review letters and are comfortable with all the comments and think that we can work with staff to resolve all those. They're fairly minor. So unless there's any questions from the commission for us, that's really all I have tonight.
I do have one question. I don't know if this is a feature that you look at for this type of a facility, but is there any thought given to putting some electrical connections for if you've got diesel vehicles that are parked there on the property? Sometimes in the overnight, they like to keep those engine blocks warm.
You know, we have done cost analysis on that over the years at every lot we've opened, and we've never found that it makes financial sense. I mean, to run power, to do it, normally just the amount of power you have to bring in, nobody wants to pay for it. So we've never seen it, and most trucks now are getting away from the plug-ins. I shouldn't say they're not most. They all still have it, but with the emergence of electric and everything like that, I mean, the one thing we could see in the future is bringing electric to do charging stations. We're not there yet, but, you know, the power, it just gets very expensive. So we've never found that the cost makes sense to date.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Tyler, supported by Scott to open the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Public hearing's open. This is an opportunity for you out in the audience to offer any questions that you have on the project. If you come forward to the lectern, got to push the button there to.
It's on already, so.
It's on already. And just give us your name and address and your concern.
Hi, it's Ted Evans. I'm representing Faith United Church of God. That's a neighbor of the lot. And my address, if you need my home address, is 8171 48th Avenue in Hudsonville, Michigan. We've been in contact with Tricia and Scott, and we have a couple of concerns, not saying that we're against the project or anything like that, but there is a steep slope on that parking lot. And, you know, you guys have addressed some of the things. I think the fear is our church butts up to the wetlands, and that's part of some of our property. And the wetlands, we have a beaver issue, which is blocking both our drainage to the drainage ditch from the wetlands and the drainage ditch itself. The beavers are there. So we're really concerned about the possibility of additional water coming into the wetlands and threatening our church basement and our heating system and so forth. So we've been in contact. I've been given some resources to contact with the DNR about the beaver situation, but there is a dam on the actual drainage ditch that runs along the highway, which is something that I don't think the church is responsible for. So those are really the concerns that we have, is just over the last 20 years with the medical building going in there, the wetlands has grown already, and we don't want to see that potential growth continue because it will threaten our property. So I don't know if you have any questions for me, but I just wanted to bring those concerns up to you guys and let you know. Some of it I think we have to work through, but that drainage ditch I don't believe is our property, and I'm sure it's not. I'm sure there's an easement for it as well, so.
Scott, you have any perspective on that?
Yeah, we've talked quite a bit. DPW has gotten involved as well to help out and gotten them some information on exactly how you go about hiring a trapper to get rid of a beaver. And we've had similar situations in some public areas in other parts of the city. This one, all of the wetland is on private property and is not contained in an easement. It's God's country, right?
Yeah.
And so we can't go in there and do anything like that. Now, part of the ditch that goes along the south part of the church is kind of right on the line with MDOT. So there may be some help that MDOT can provide with that. They're certainly not qualified to go out and remove beavers, but they have staff that work with Eagle all the time to work through some of those things. So I think there's a solution out there. I don't think we can do much more than give advice.
Okay.
In this case. So the detention pond that's for this development was built as part of Walkerview and is there and has been waiting for development upstream. And it will go into that wetland. There's no doubt about that. But as far as obstructions to the wetland, they're private.
Okay.
Or public if you think of the wetland as untouchable and protected.
Okay. And the applicant,
Can I respond to
probably
that?
just to make them aware of that circumstance.
Can I respond? I want to clarify. The beavers are one situation. They have created dams that are in that drainage ditch. And so I don't know if the city of Walker is responsible. Scott says that it's MDOT. I don't know if you guys can help with that situation, but I don't believe we're allowed to remove that dam. And it's there in the drainage ditch, which means the wetlands is going to be backed up further. So those are our concerns.
Okay. And it sounds like from the input you've gotten back from, feedback from city engineer, that perhaps contacting MDOT and seeing where you might have some common ground literally there.
Okay.
I've dealt with beavers several times, and first thing is probably contact the DNR and see what they say. Because they may say, hey, we'll come out and maybe trap them or something silly like that, or something like that. They're probably the best ones to start with, and they're aware of the problem, because they're interested in wetlands and everything like that. So that was just my opinion. So.
And we've been given that DNR contact in the forums and stuff, so I think we're good there. Again, my concern is more about the dam that's already there that we don't have the right to touch. And, I don't know if it affects the approval of this or not, but it's a concern because you can have a great drainage from that parking lot, but if it stops up the whole system, we have a problem.
So we would get in even more trouble than you would if we go out there and trap and remove the dam, because they expect we know better. And, I think they're going to offer a private property owner a little bit more latitude.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or concerns on this project? Seeing none?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Tyler, supported by Scott to close the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Looks like it's a fairly straightforward project. We've got recommendations from both Tricia and Scott as to how to address it. Tricia did note that there's kind of a crossover on one of the conditions she has, very similar to Scott's, but it looks like we may be ready for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion. Case number 22-024, 1920 Northridge Drive Northwest, Transport Properties Final Area Site Plan. I make a motion to approve the final area site plan for Transport Properties truck/trailer storage truck terminal located at 1920 Northridge Drive Northwest per the plan set last revision dated 8/3/2022, subject to the following conditions and based on the findings below. Number one, the applicant shall address all items outlined in the city engineer's report dated 8/9/2022. Number 2, the applicant shall add the location of the existing KCRC driveway and ensure that the proposed access driveway aligns on a revised plan for review and approved by staff prior to the issuance of a building permit. Number 3, the applicant may be required to submit a financial guarantee in the form of a letter of credit, surety bond, or cash deposit to ensure the quality completion of exterior site-related items such as landscaping and parking, lot striping, if occupancy of the site is requested prior to the quality completion of these items. Number 4, the applicant shall provide 3 sealed sets of the civil engineered plans incorporating the recommended revisions to the Community Development Department prior to the issuance of a building permit. Findings of fact. The proposed development conforms to the city's general development plan or any part thereof. Number 2, the proposed development conforms to the intent and to all regulations and standards of this article and of this chapter as applicable. Number 3, the proposed development can be adequately served by public facilities and services such as highways, streets, police and fire protection, drainage courses, water and sanitary sewer facilities, refuse disposal, or that the persons or agencies responsible for the proposed development shall be able to provide in a manner acceptable to the Planning Commission any such facilities and services. Number 4, the location of the proposed uses, layout of the site, and its relation to streets giving access to it shall be such that traffic to, from, and within the site and assembly of persons in connection therewith will not be hazardous or inconvenient to the project or the surrounding area. In applying this standard, the Planning Commission shall consider, among other things, convenient routes for pedestrian traffic, particularly of children, relationship of the proposed project to main thoroughfares and street intersections, and the general character and intensity of the existing and potential development of the surrounding area. Number 5, noise, odor, light, or other external effects from any source whatsoever which is connected with the proposed use will not adversely affect adjacent and neighboring lands or uses. And number 6, the property has adequate access to public streets. The plan provides for logical extension of public streets and provides suitable street connections to adjacent parcels where applicable.
Okay, we have a motion. Supported by Mark. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is case number 22-025, final area site plan approval extension with regard to an AGO gas station. Tricia, if you could introduce that, please, as Jason returns to the dais.
Thanks, Terry. So this is a final area site plan, not an extension, but an update. Nothing has changed on the plan since your approval on May 18 of 2020. This is because the zoning ordinance has, it has a 2-year period for being able to grant an extension of the approval. They have to come back to the Planning Commission to seek approval again. But I didn't want to hash through a whole presentation and their plans again, since nothing on the plan set has changed. After the Planning Commission meeting that was in May, the site plan was updated to reflect some underground detention and truck turning templates that were added after the approval. They began to work with Scott and the engineering department on stormwater stuff. But if you remember, their meeting, I think, was one of the first ones we had remotely, because they were scheduled to go in March to the Planning Commission in 2020, and then COVID kind of hit and the whole entire world shut down. And so in my conversations with Jason Berris, the property owner, COVID has a lot to do with why the project kind of had to pause for so long, and he had some other projects that were going in other parts of the county that he had to focus on, and those were kind of taking a long time too. So I'll let him talk more about that stuff. But as far as process goes, we're here with the same exact plan, and the Planning Commission is being asked to provide the same approval to the plan as they did previously. I do have a couple added conditions, just because I just wanted to update the conditions to reflect some of the standard conditions that I've been adding to projects lately related to requiring a financial guarantee. So just in case we need to do that, I want to be able to have a condition in there that the Planning Commission approved. And then also the landscape plan. So if any changes, not that we're anticipating any, but if there are any changes, we'd like staff to have the discretion to review and approve those changes rather than having to go back to the Planning Commission. And so I also have the first condition in here, that they shall work with the engineering department to address all the items listed in Scott's report from 2 years ago, and then also in his updated report. And then I have, you may remember that Frank wrote that report from the first approval. That was when I was just coming on board with Walker. And so I want to reference that report in the conditions also, because there's some conditions in there as well. And that's really all I have for this one.
Okay, any questions for Tricia? All right. Scott Connors, City Engineer.
So last time around, we had a very clean report, which is rare, with the infamous gold star that's out there. But there were some issues after the approval with the storm sewer system. I think Steve has made some changes to bring that, to bring a solution to that, but I think he needs to explain that a little bit, because it is a plan change. And I do remember that we had reached an impasse when the project was kind of set aside. So there may be some massaging that needs to take place, and Steve can cover that.
Otherwise, consistent with the prior.
As far as we could tell, it was just the storm sewer issue, and they'll touch on that, hopefully. Hopefully I didn't press the button, so.
All right, any other comments or questions? This may be a good opportunity for the applicant, represented by Steve Witte, to bring us up to date.
Sure. Commissioners, my name is Steve Witte from Nederveld, here tonight representing AGO. With me in attendance is Jason Berris from AGO. First of all, thank you for your time and consideration regarding this request. I won't bore you with the entire details of the project. As Tricia said, the exact same plan that you reviewed and approved back a couple years ago. Again, the timing got screwed up with COVID. That shut down pretty much everything. And then, as Tricia indicated, there's another project in Cannon Township that took priority for AGO over this project. So that project is now wrapped up, and we want to move forward with this project now. But unfortunately, that 2-year time frame has elapsed. So now we're in front of you again. I think from the previous meeting, all the conditions and comments have been addressed. There are two outstanding things that I still have to work through. First of all, I did submit the plan back in 2020 to MDOT for their approval. I did get comments back from them, and I've addressed like 90% of their comments, but one of their comments is they wanted to see the painted lines in Wilson. So I have to still do that. Very minor, but I still have to do that. And then the second one, which is larger, as Scott indicated, is finishing up the drainage calculations for this project. The change there is when I originally designed the project, I had chamber systems, but then my outlet was to the storm sewer in Wilson. MDOT has a policy now that any land that does not drain to MDOT cannot go there. So it doesn't matter volume of water, they look at the area of land. So in other words, if I have half an acre of area draining toward the street, I can drain a half an acre of area to the street. So MDOT in essence said, you can't drain to our storm sewer. So what that made me do is that made me do my low flow outlet to the storm sewer that's in Leonard, which is fine. However, the storm sewer in Leonard is at a little bit higher elevation. So then what I ran into is water doesn't flow uphill, so I'm still trying to figure out the best way to do the chamber system, get the water to flow from our site, from the chambers to Leonard. Back a couple of years ago when I talked to Scott about it, one of the thoughts we had was, well, let's do some soil borings, test pit, see if there's any granular soil, possibly to get some infiltration there, and that might work. Unfortunately, we did a test pit and it's all clay. So that doesn't work. So bottom line is that's kind of right when the project got put on hold, so I didn't really worry about it anymore. But now I'll have to pick that back up, take another look at that, work with Scott to find a solution for that. The easy solution is just add chambers that are shallower depth, shallower profile. The reason we don't really want to do that is that obviously costs a lot more money. So it's really a money thing, monetary thing, trying to figure out what does work, what makes sense. And that's something I can easily do working with Scott to review it, but that's really the issue from a stormwater standpoint. Plan-wise, what you see above grade again, though, is the exact same as what you saw back in 2020. So that being said, hopefully that answers your question, but if you have any questions about that or the site plan, I'd be more than happy to answer those types of questions. If you have any questions on the business side of it, Jason is your person there. So thank you again.
To confirm, you realize you have to get rid of the water and has to be okay by Scott.
Understood, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I just
I
want
think
that out there.
we were like 95% there, I think, back in 2020, but then we didn't get quite to the 100%. So
I just wanted clear that you have to fix the stormwater
oh yeah,
issue.
100%. Yes. Yep.
So maybe I should add on that, and as I told Steve last time, we've had a lot of flooding on Leonard to the east also. And so the last thing we want to do is then, MDOT's principle of don't add another square inch of tributary area to their direction. Well, we feel the same way. So it's going to have to be a balancing act to send some water each way.
Yep.
And I think the way the recommendation is stated is that that's an issue that's recognized by both the city and the applicant, and it'll be worked out on a staff level. It doesn't have to come back to the planning commission.
Unless we can't settle our differences.
Okay, unless it doesn't settle, then they gotta come
Well,
back.
I'm sure we'll come up with something.
Okay, all right.
Because we love seeing you back, Steve.
Yeah.
Now, one other thing that's transpired most recently with the proposal across the street, there will be a traffic analysis forthcoming, correct?
It's my understanding, well, I told Lewis Farms that we needed an updated traffic study for their site. I think MDOT knows that there's an updated traffic study coming, and I think they're a little hesitant to look at the intersection without that updated study, because then they're not accounting for all that traffic. So I think it's in Lewis Farms' hands to get that done.
Okay.
I don't know if they realize how urgent it is. I brought it up a couple of times, but it's on them to get that done.
And it's more useful information for you, and probably the sooner the better as far as planning for that site. But as far as the possibility of having this traffic signal changed at some point to accommodate the traffic movements, that'll be a key element.
Understood. And back in 2020, when we went through it, we had to do a traffic study for our site, and then at that same time, Lewis Farms was doing traffic study for theirs. So I'm well aware of that and the issues there. And I think the majority of the traffic obviously is from Lewis Farms, but I'm fully aware of the traffic study there.
Okay.
And impacts for it.
Any other comments, questions, issues that are foreseen?
Terry, I was just going to mention that one of the conditions in Frank's report relates directly to that, to any improvements that would be needed at the intersection.
And how was that finally worded, how was that incorporated into the action that was taken back then?
Like what was in the motion?
Well, yeah, does that suggest that there may be, as a result of that study, that there'd be responsibilities on the part of the private property owners to contribute to the solution, or?
I don't know.
So, right,
While you're looking, let me say this.
it's right here.
There's no second chance to go back and ask them to participate, past this point. So unless it's very clearly written as a condition, And in this case, it would have to be something that would be negotiated between two different developers and MDOT to add the left turn phase, then it's going to be difficult to enforce that after the fact.
So the motion for tonight adds that any conditions in Frank's report from 2020 are still applicable. And so right here, he indicates condition of FASP approval. So he says, hopefully the M11 traffic signal will be upgraded to a left turning phase, and the applicant should be responsible for their proportionate costs for the infrastructure improvement.
Okay, I guess at this point, look to the applicant and to determine whether you're aware of that and of that possibility.
Yeah, my name's Jason Berris from the last meeting stuff. So, as Steve kind of alluded to, when we had a couple, I call them like roundtable meetings here before when they're doing Lewis Farm and doing all those upgrades, and we did our study, they did theirs, and they came back and said actually there's more impact from Lewis Farms, so there's a little bit of a toss-up that it should be more onto their side of things. And that was before, when they had kind of a light commercial and kind of a office use site plan 2 years prior and stuff. And now it seems like if they did it, I would assume that there's going to be a little bit even more of an impact than there was 2 years ago. And we're keeping the same thing. As I said in that meeting 2 weeks ago, you know, they're planning on doing a station twice the size of ours. They're almost twice the size of ours. They're, I think you guys nixed it, but they did show a drive-through, possible drive-through and a restaurant and stuff. It was kind of a little bit of a change from the office and kind of the light commercial. So I think that was one of the things is like, if they're adding 90% of the impact, that would be mostly their proportion.
Well, and I asked a question so that you're aware of it.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
the terms of it eventually are gonna have to be worked out with through the
yeah,
city manager's
yeah.
office.
Yep.
So,
Yeah,
just to get an acknowledgement that you're aware that there'd be some responsibility there as a byproduct of this.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And that it,
Yeah, we realized that. It was just back then, it was, you know, they kind of, I think Frank and Dan kind of said that, oh, it's probably going to fall more on Lewis when they start developing that or whatever. So there's a little bit of a, you know, however fast the wheels get going and stuff, and then COVID hit, and here we are again, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, the
so
terms.
yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah, we're fine with that, so.
Okay.
But the only thing I would say is, and I don't know what level this would be, is you know, if we started today and built our site or tomorrow or something, and we're done early, I mean, I think there's a little bit of a question on if they said, okay, a left-hand turning lane had to be installed before we could get our final occupancy permit or whatever. How does that happen when, you know, that means Lewis Farms would have to come in? I mean, they couldn't, you know what I'm saying, on that connection? How would you get that through if they had to put that in there and they weren't ready and we were?
So yes, I understand what you're saying.
There's like a balancing.
Right, and we wouldn't, the building official would not let us hold occupancy for that. But I think this is something that we probably have to work on with the Lewis Farms folks. And, you know, this condition, as it's written, says that the final cost apportionment should be assigned by the Walker City engineer. So Scott's going to be fully responsible for figuring out what that cost is. But I would assume that after this meeting, you know, they are planning on bringing their project to the Planning Commission on September 7th. And so when those approvals are in place, we can probably, you know, have more discussion on what those costs would be and what the appropriate proportion would be.
Yeah, that's fine. Maybe we put it in escrow or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And again, I think it's more the timing side of it, because I think it's MDOT jurisdiction too, so MDOT has to agree to it as well, so
Yeah,
it's the timing thing.
Yeah, and
But
if-
the main thing for our site was the left turning phase, adjusting that, so.
Yeah, yeah, we understand that's gonna be kind
Okay.
of
Just,
tricky.
is Leonard a truck route?
No.
Okay, the question is, and I can't remember from this project right here, did your turning and movement of tankers through the property come in off from M11 and come out onto M11?
I don't know if the movement shows it off M11, I know the entrance does, but let me
We
find
would,
it.
we wouldn't object to them using that portion of Leonard that they must use.
Okay.
You know, we would totally understand that, you know, if you can't turn left out of Wilson, then it's required.
Okay.
So we do see trucks off the truck route all the time, and many times it's legal, because that's their only route.
Okay, all right.
I actually didn't bring that sheet, but yes.
Are you comfortable, Scott, with that, the dollars associated with that turning lane? Because there's a chance that that may not happen right away, and
Correct.
once it leaves here, then it's kind of in your hands.
Well, I guess we'd have to use Frank's memo here as a framework.
Okay.
That a
so
good answer?
You would essentially be assigning some sort of value to it somewhere during the course of their part of the project, so that they would know.
If I understood, I'm guessing a little bit, speculating a little bit here, but if I understood Frank's comment correctly, I would say he's looking for that assignment to be data-driven based on both of their reports. I don't think he wants us to do a study.
What if they don't produce that report? What happens in that situation?
Then you could still ask MDOT to run the numbers to see if the left turn phase is approved.
Okay.
This could go a lot of different ways, right? So to tell you that I'm super comfortable and have all the confidence in the world, I can't do that. We're
I
certainly
just don't
gonna
want to put
try.
you in a bad position with this, but I also don't want them to be in a bad position and not necessarily know all of a sudden nothing happens with the other portion. They get done with their project, they want occupancy, they want to start going, and at some point they would need to know
If it got to
how
that,
much that is, and I think it's fair to them that we would tell them before they would have an occupancy, so
Yeah.
that way we could collect that.
I think if it got to that point, we would have to use kind of an arbitrary number, and it would be a reasonable number. I mean, we're not talking about, the left turn phase isn't $200,000. It's probably maybe up to 20,000. And, you know, their percentage might be a quarter or less related to Lewis Farms. And we'd have to just work through that.
And
But we
that's
also don't wanna-
acceptable to the applicant also, correct?
Before they answer, I don't think that we want them to have to give us money if the left turn phase isn't going in either.
Yeah,
So-
there's a lot of complications
yeah.
there, but as long as everyone's in the same agreement there.
I think they're negotiating.
I hate it to be really ambiguous coming out of here, and then all of a sudden there's all this, we should have done this or that.
Well, if it would make you guys more comfortable, we could add a condition that the applicant shall deposit an amount determined by Scott.
Yeah, I'm gonna go like this. 5,000.
Into an escrow account so that, you know, the money is there for their portion.
I'm not comfortable with that. They build their gas station, nothing happens across the street, no left turn signal goes in, we're holding on to their money.
We don't have to hold their money forever.
Well,
Put a 2-year window on it. If it doesn't happen in 2 years, they should get their money back.
And then the other thing is what part of their project, as soon as they break ground on something, then that starts their clock running, right? It doesn't matter if they just did the gas station or they started doing townhomes or anything like that, right?
It's difficult to say.
I know, it's
yeah,
I have no problem with putting money in and just run it. It's more important for us to, you know, when the time comes and we're ready to open, I don't want those guys, you know, I don't want someone dragging their feet because they're still trying to do something across the street or whatever, so, whatever it is. And then if we had to put 20 down, that's fine, and then you find, you know, it could be like a escrow account, and then if they come out with a dollar amount that it's less, whatever our percentage is, you cut it back. That, I don't want that to be a issue on either side, you know.
Okay.
That's more than reasonable.
Yeah.
That's more than reasonable, so I'm sure we can work through something, but it's gonna be kind of a living, breathing thing until we get some signatures down.
Yeah, and I think this would obviously be all part of an agreement that would be drafted and reviewed by our attorney, so that there are specific terms in there, so that we're required to reimburse them if, you know, XYZ doesn't happen.
So you may want to consider adding a condition that says there will be an agreement. Because if it's not a condition of the approval, unless it's written in that paragraph there, I didn't see it.
It is
Oh, it
kind
is,
of
okay.
in there.
So
The
memorial,
planning
yep,
commission
okay.
can require this condition of FASP approval be memorialized in a site development agreement.
There you go. So that's already in there.
And then would there be a contingency on MDOT also, that sometimes they seem to be, we've been trying to do some other projects and they're, you know, sometimes they're a little delayed and behind. You know, I'd hate to have that all.
I think the fact that it says agreement in this condition is enough for us. Then when the agreement
Then
gets
it's on
written,
you.
we'll get all those terms in there and we'll
Okay.
have a little back and forth.
Yeah, good.
We'll probably spend more money on the agreement than we'll spend on
Yeah.
your portion,
Yeah,
but we'll get it done.
yeah. We'll hire a traffic cop just to stand out there. Might be easier.
All right, I think we're ready to call the question.
I got one question. You have a time frame in mind? It's been a while on this.
Yeah, we were kind of ready to pull the trigger. To be honest with you, we were gonna start in the spring, but based on what's kind of happening now, we're probably gonna start as soon as we can. It's a long story on ordering tanks and stuff like that. Our industry has been so backed up in products and equipment, but we have tanks ordered that should arrive actually this fall. So, you know, we'd like to probably start breaking ground probably before the snow flies, you know. So, gonna be like a late spring opening, hopefully.
All right,
Okay, it's not a public hearing, right?
correct.
No, okay. Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion, case number 22-025, 4346 Leonard Street Northwest, AGO gas station final area site plan update. I make a motion to approve the update of approval, sorry, maybe I shouldn't make this. Start over. I make a motion to approve the update of approved final area site plan for proposed AGO gas station and C-store per the plan set last revision dated 5/18/2020. Presently located at 4346 Leonard Street Northwest, subject to the following updated conditions. Number one, the applicant shall work with the engineering department to address all items listed in the city engineer's report dated 3/11/20 and 8/9/22. Number two, the applicant shall address all items noted in the community development director's staff report dated 3/11/22. Number three, any changes to the approved landscape plan shall be reviewed and approved by staff prior to the building occupancy. Number four, the applicant shall provide 3 sealed sets of civil engineered plans incorporating the recommended conditions to the community development department prior to the issuance of a building permit. Number five, the applicant may be required to provide a financial guarantee in the form of a letter of credit or cash escrow deposit to ensure the quality completion of site-related items such as landscaping at the time of the building permit issue. Number six, the applicant shall make a deposit into an escrow account relating to the traffic signal update at an agreed-upon rate with the city engineer. And that's it. Yep.
I just have to point out one typo, it's kind of important. Condition number 2, it says Frank's report was dated 3/11/22, but it's 3/11/2020.
Okay, number two, I amend to 3/11/2020.
May I entertain an amendment on number 6, just to match the language of number 5, to provide a financial guarantee in the form of a letter of credit, cash escrow, or cash escrow deposit, so they can do either or.
Certainly, agreed. Thank you.
Support.
Okay, we've got a motion by Tyler, supported by Jason, to conditionally approve the final area site plan. Any questions about the motion? There being none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same time. Motion carried.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is case number 22-016, final area site plan, previously tabled for Tidal Wave Auto Spa. Hand it over to Tricia Anderson.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to remove the item from the table for further deliberation.
Second. Okay, motion by Tyler, supported by Scott, to remove this from the table and to be able to proceed with the review. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Tricia.
Thanks, Terry. So we had this tidal wave project at our July 6th meeting. And so we had given, it was tabled, we had given the applicant some direction as to what we'd like to see in a revised submittal. Again, this is just the background. They're based out of Georgia. They have a lot of locations in the southeast. They specialize in fast tunnel car wash and associated amenities. And so the site that they're working on is this site within the Westtown PUD at 248 Wilson. And this is one of the last, or it is the last remaining site in the Westtown PUD. You might remember that they had some challenges with the Westtown service drive kind of cutting right through the site. And so this is a look at their previous site plan. And then they provided a revised site plan. And so I'm going to point out just a couple of items that are pretty important with the revised site plan. So one of them is that the pay kiosk has been shifted up further. And while this doesn't necessarily affect the number of cars that would be in this stacked area, it puts the pause up a little bit further so you can have more cars in before they have to stop and wait at this pay kiosk. They've also added some additional width to this radius to allow for some space for a couple of cars to fit in here. Whereas before, I think this is where they have to go down to one car right after they leave that pay kiosk. So they did shift that, which I feel like sufficiently alleviates the big issue that we would have with cars being stacked out onto the Westtown Service Drive. That's one of the things that I think was the most concerning about this site plan. Because, you know, on busy days, cars are stacked like crazy at car washes on sunny days, especially like in the spring. So I believe this design is going to alleviate that a little bit. The other area that we asked them to work on with the design of the site was to revise one of these driveway locations so that at least one of them could be both ingress and egress. You might remember on this site, these were both one-way going out, so cars would go through the line and then they could stop at a vacuum site and then they'd have to go out one of these driveways. Well, the question came of where are employees going to enter the site lawfully? Where is a garbage truck going to enter the site? You know, where are the supplies going to be delivered without somebody going, oh no, I'm going the wrong way. So we asked them to address that. And so here on the revised site plan, they provided an in and out driveway that goes to the service drive. They've also moved the dumpster, and they have they've shifted the building over to 14.2 feet from the property line, and that's because of this gas, what is it called, a reactor site?
It's a chamber for a gas main.
Okay, chamber for a gas main. So, Scott had a lot of back and forth with a representative from DTE, and so he was able to provide what their minimum standards are for buildings and other structures or improvements from that DTE structure. And so I think that's obviously the reason why the building has shifted over. But we did also say that we thought that the building was a little bit too close to that property line. And so this shift, whether it's required by DTE or not, I think is a good thing for this revised site plan. We had also, so this is kind of just my exact slide from the last time they were here. We had the issue with the parking where on the previous, previous site plan, it showed 2 ADA accessible spaces and then 1 regular space. And I want to say that they said that they would have 3 employees on during operating hours. The revised plan shows the same configuration with 1 standard space and 2 ADA spaces, and they've indicated that employees can park at the vacuum spaces. And at the last meeting, we've indicated that we don't think that that's probably going to be the best way forward, and we'd like to see a couple of those vacuum spaces be removed so that there are some actual legit parking spaces for their employees. And as you can see, the vacuum spaces are still all the same. So this issue has not been addressed. The vehicle stacking, I already went through. I feel like it's been addressed. The site circulation has been addressed so that there's two-way traffic going into the site and out of the site. There was also a question on the architectural renderings in relation to the overhead doors on the side of the building, and what their function was with the overall car wash operation. And I remember Jason had some comments and questions about, like, would you know, those doors be opening and water spraying out onto Lake Michigan Drive in some situation. And I believe that the applicant they sent me some things today, which I forwarded to the Planning Commission. And so I'm hoping that the applicant will be able to go through those things just to kind of give a better clarification as to what those overhead doors are. And then the architectural plans, I think some of you thought that they were like flipped or backwards. So we've asked for those elevations to be labeled a little bit more appropriately. We didn't get anything until today where I think the labels have been updated in that email that I sent you today. We also asked for, I remember Steve asked for the acoustic study to be provided from a site that was more comparable to the variables that you've got going on over at Westtown, rather than the rural site in Georgia that the previous acoustic study was provided from. So we didn't get that. We didn't get that with their resubmittal, but they provided us with a different acoustic study in that email that I sent you today. And then the landscaping from the last plan, I had recommended that they added 2 more trees, so they did that. I also recommended that they note the location of the irrigation system, and that they also add a note that they'll be willing to work with the DDA on any required landscape elements or streetscape elements that they will require as part of this upcoming project that they have in the future. So that note was not there either. So my recommendation, you know, if the Planning Commission feels that some of these items that are still kind of hanging out there as loose ends, if the Planning Commission feels that they're comfortable enough with letting staff review and approve those items, Then I've provided a motion for you to approve with conditions. And then also I made a suggested motion for you to table if you decide to take that route and you don't feel like you have the comfort level to hand all that off to staff.
All right.
So that's it for me.
Thank you, Tricia. Any questions? Tricia at this point? Okay, turn it over to Scott.
So we did the typical engineering report where we left all of the comments intact from the last meeting and just added some new comments in bold. So they have addressed some of the items. I won't hit all of them. Just kind of casually going through, we still don't know about the cross-access easement in Westtown. They did provide an updated survey, but it had 63 exemptions. An exemption is like an easement or a bylaw or an agreement, and that's a lot of exemptions. So it was really hard to tell based on what was shown on there, and we just need to have them be very clear to that one condition, and it could even be a supplement to the plan as long as we know that it's confirmed. We also provided them, again, the DDA sidewalk section. Super important to get that just right. As we learned from the DDA just yesterday, they want to make sure that we're a lot more detailed about things like that. So we want to make sure that we follow through on it. The full service driveway takes care of some of our issues. The parking, to me, is still an issue. I guess from an engineering perspective, just one regular parking spot just doesn't seem to get the job done. And I'd recommend that they have a couple of those vacuum stations removed and just make those parking for suppliers or employees or visitors, whoever's going to come out of the site. They did move the building, and that's very helpful, away from the gas main, but the gas main's still not shown on the plan, so we want to have that shown because it's obviously a very important thing that needs to be there for the contractor that gets this project. The issue with the water reclamation is still valid. They do have some notes about maintenance. And then we get down to a couple new notes with this version. And first and foremost there is that the plans were sealed by professionals from Pennsylvania. And when we review something publicly in Michigan, it has to be sealed by a professional engineer in Michigan. So they could file to get their licenses in Michigan through reciprocity, or they could use somebody who's already certified to be sealing plans in Michigan. Either way, that's an important thing as we move forward. The existing water main wasn't shown on plan. We didn't catch that last time. There's some new site lighting that is very, very close to the sidewalk, so we want to point out that they need to maintain 1 foot of clearance from all sidewalk and back of curb. And then lastly, with the change in the dumpster, I think there's good enough vision past the dumpster, but all the landscaping around that could be an impediment to vision. So we'll want to make them do a site distance analysis. They'll design or they'll put a car there and they'll say, okay, what's the site distance triangle? And they'll look at the proposed vegetation at mature height. You can't look at it brand new because you have to speculate that it's going to grow up. And then make sure that there's still good site distance there. So a couple new ones, couple old ones there.
Hi, my name's Erin Goglin. I wasn't here last time. My colleague Kayleigh Bevington was, but I'm with Bohler Engineering. We're located in Pittsburgh, so that's why we messed up. I'm gonna blame someone else for that because it wasn't me, but we did include the PA seal. We definitely have a Michigan license, so we'll get that fixed very easily. When Kayleigh told me she was coming to Walker, I was like, yes, West Michigan. My husband's actually from Holland, so we came out here for a nice little trip in the summer for West Michigan, so I'm happy to be here tonight. Can you go back up to maybe the issues one that you had? We can start with that. I think it was the parking was the first one. Yeah, so we do still show just 3 parking stalls on the site. Tidal Wave feels it would be a good decision for them to add some signage to some of the vacuum stalls that says employee parking only. they don't want to necessarily remove the parking or the vacuum stations, as that's pretty much their typical what they place on every site. So in order to kind of avoid some of that redesign, they're suggesting that they place some employee-only parking signage and kind of police that on their own to make sure that people aren't using or blocking employees. And then vehicles and site circulations is good. The landscape, as Scott mentioned, we can definitely add that site triangle to our plans. Not thinking that's going to be an issue. And then the irrigation, we would also add that. That was missed as well. So no problems adding any of that to our plan set prior to final approval. The acoustical study, Kayleigh did send over a plan today. It referenced another site that was in a commercial area similar to Walker. The acoustic engineer, he doesn't believe that this is going to be an issue. The levels are consistent with the federal highway regulations for sound at these sites. It's about 80 decibels at the property lines typically, so that's consistent with, I have a cute little table here that says shouting at a meter or garbage disposal or a normal vacuum cleaner. So sound shouldn't be an issue with these. Do you need me to put the architecturals up? I have them on a...
Did you want to use the camera, or do you want me to plug it in? Oh, okay, we can do that. Okay. Because we were messing with the camera today because there was something wrong with it.
I got to my in-laws' house and I was like, do you have a thumb drive that I can borrow? And they were kind enough to let me borrow that.
Plug it in.
The overhead doors, those are functional doors on the building. They primarily are for when the weather's nice, to kind of open them up and let the employees get some of that nicer weather inside. They don't have any issues with water splashing out typically from these doors. And then here are the revised.
Should I open the other one?
Shows the location of, sorry, my eyes are bad, of where the water is used inside the tunnels. There's no water usage where those roll-up doors are, so it really shouldn't be an issue with water coming out. And then I'm not sure if there's any questions with these elevations that I can answer before we switch to the other ones. I'm not 100% sure what the questions were the last time, so. And then these are the revised elevations indicating what's what with respect to the surrounding streets. So the top elevation is the entrance, which faces the Consumer Credit Union. The middle, longer one is the elevation facing the Wilson Avenue, and the bottom is towards Westwood Drive. Do you guys have any questions I can answer right now on the elevations?
We seem to disagree to what you want and what our staff wants. Are we close enough to work between us and get it figured out, or do we need to table this, or do we,
I think we can work together to figure it out. I think.
You think you can give it? We're a little bullheaded. We're proud of this community, and
Yeah.
we got some pretty sharp cookies here, so you're gonna have to give in on some of this stuff. That's my feeling.
Mm-hmm. I can keep going in addressing if there's anything else on that list that you need me to.
Okay, Tricia, did she touch upon the items that you were referencing?
Yeah, for the most part. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about the acoustic study and like where that was taken from and,
Well, let me bring something up here. I'll be the Scrooge in the room. I'll be Tom, he's not here. I don't look at things that I get the afternoon before a meeting. Neither does staff. We don't have time, they don't have time. None of this stuff has been in the reports. We have a lot of what-ifs here. Oh, this can be done, that can be done. Tom always said, we're not here to make a deal, we're here to approve a site plan. In front of me is a site plan I can't approve. There's not enough detail, there's a lot of things that can change on it, there's a lot of things that need to be changed on it. So what I'm saying right now is she can talk all she wants, but until I see a site plan and maybe 1 or 2 or 3 points that we have to clear up, I'm not comfortable in approving it. I've never have been. This is not specific to your plan. I never have been with any plans. So right off, I'm on the side of I cannot approve this tonight. So I just want to get that out there. This should have been done in the past, 2 weeks ago, and so that they could have reviewed it. So that's my opinion. It may not be popular, so.
I respect your opinion. I don't blame you guys for not looking at it today. It should have definitely been in prior today. So I do apologize for the lateness on that.
Well, so you raise a good point. I guess another way to look at it is the major issues that were highlighted at the last meeting. Are we closer to having those addressed, satisfied? I know there's one thing that's missing that I know that Scott has indicated is very important, is clarification on cross-access easement. Sounds like there's some documentation here, but it's doesn't necessarily clarify in what the circumstance is. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think, I hope that it's resolved somewhere, but we haven't seen it clearly delineated to us yet. I'm sorry, but, sorry.
I was going to say, from my understanding, it doesn't seem like it was maybe recorded. Tidal Wave has no problem allowing for that to be recorded at this time. We can add, if we need to show the easement on our plan and get that recorded, they'd be happy to do so.
That scares me because we've had a couple other site plans out here where we said, this is a concern, and they've said, oh, we got it, don't worry, it's covered here, here, and here. So I think having it as a condition is really important so that if we have to go back, they have to comply.
Okay.
Okay.
Obviously, in terms of the detail on the elevations of the building that was specifically called out, those were transmitted today. And you're right, staff hasn't had to take time to look at it, and I didn't see that message come up on my phone this afternoon, so I haven't looked at it either. So it's a case here where we're falling short on a number of details here. And are they at a level where we want to have it tabled and have them come back and clean them all up at the same time?
Yeah. I'm fine with the tabling, but first, we seem to be glossing over it, the number of employees in the employee parking lot. How many employees are you gonna have on site? I mean,
I believe it's at one given time, the most employees would be 3.
so you got three spots for 3 employees, that's it.
And I'll speak to my knowledge of the client. This is typical for their sites. Their employees typically do park in the vacuum spaces, and it doesn't cause an issue for their operation, which is why they said, yes, we can add some signage to say these are employee-only spots.
Well, I guess I would see like a shift change being problematic. Someone comes, they've got 3 employees on site, someone comes in to relieve someone, and you don't have a parking spot for them.
I think they would
I'm not sure my staff report would be clean then if it's just a sign, but they still want to put the vacuums in, because that feels like it's bait and switch maybe, I don't know. We don't want to see cars that are parked in front of the dumpster or in the aisleways, and we should make sure that there's enough room for what's required here. And again, those 2 handicap spots are not employee spots unless you hire 2 folks that have the ability to use handicap spots. And that's probably rare for a hands-on job like this. So they need at least 2 more, and the shift change thing is a great point. You likely need a little bit more than the number of employees at that time. So I would recommend that they take 2 or 4 of those vacuums out completely and then designated them as employee or visitor parking.
Jason, you were prepared to offer some comments?
Well, I was gonna mention the same thing that Mark was just saying. I think I'm okay with it saying employee parking, but I agree with what Scott was saying. You can't have the vacuum there then. I mean, they should be designated as employees parking spots. But we need to have at least the 3 that are required, and I think Mark is correct, where you'll at least have 1 more that you'll need in addition to it. Yeah, I think that all the items are getting to where we want this to be, but they need to be on the drawing, so that way we're approving something that it's tangible, not just, okay, this, and this are all kind of out there. And none of us have probably read the acoustical study in full. I glanced over it to see that it was there, and that's about all I could catch, with it coming in, an hour before the meeting. So there's some things that are just a little bit uncomfortable moving forward with it right now, but I think they're getting to where they need to get to. It's just, maybe it wasn't quite the right date to be here.
Okay,
If you're looking for full comments, that's kind of where I'm at.
all right. Scott?
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add. I guess what I would say is that my thoughts are kind of a blend of both Tyler and Jason's. There's nothing that's concrete in front of us tonight that we've had, and staff have had an ample chance to review. And but to Jason's point, I think we're getting there, but it just needs to be something that's properly brought before staff and the commission here, so that we can, really have the chance to see what's been put forth. And so I would not be able to approve what's been presented tonight. So I guess that's my thoughts on that.
Okay. My comments are pretty much in line with what's been said as far as tabling action for a subsequent meeting to be able to get all this detail worked out. And again, that cross-access easement, that's one in particular that you want to catch that one and make sure that that's in line and acceptable before that comes back to the commission. One thing that comes to mind that it really didn't come to mind previously is that mention was made about their overall site and how the drive cuts through there. There's some land area on the east side of that drive that I don't believe the landscaping plan addresses, and I don't know how that relates to the development that's east again already existing there. So since it's part of the site, there should be some type of a landscape approach there that's
That's a good point.
perhaps coordinated with the other properties on the east side of the drive.
First, I'll preface by saying I have no problem with a car wash or this site or you or anything. But I'll make a motion on case number 22-016, 248 Wilson Avenue Northwest, Tidal Wave Auto Spa. I make a motion to table the final area site plan for proposed Tidal Wave Car Wash and Auto Spa facility located at 248 Wilson Avenue Northwest based on the following findings. The applicant did not provide the requested revisions to the architectural renderings in a timely manner. Number two, the applicant did not provide the requested information related to the overhead doors shown on the architectural plan and how they relate to the tunnel car wash operation in a timely manner. Number three, the applicant was advised to remove vacuum stalls to provide adequate parking for employees. Number four, the applicant has not provided the requested additional acoustic study conducted on site with similar variables to the West Town site in a timely manner. Number five, the plan inadequacies outlined in the city's engineer's report dated 8/9/22.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and support to table action, and it's with a detail of what the deficiencies are before that comes back to the planning commission again. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you.
I'm glad you at least got to spend time with your in-laws while you're here in West Michigan.
Sounds like once more, maybe.
The mayor just texted me, "You're not screwed, you're just a wise individual."
Thank you for coming.
I'm sorry I have to miss the sign discussion. I have something I have to be at.
Okay, well, we still have a quorum. Yep, so, no, please not.
While they're talking, maybe I can give you just a quick update on Tom. I talked to Tom today. He's going through therapy at Mary Free Bed. They're pushing him really hard. He said he's exhausted when he comes home, but that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So he's getting better. I don't know if he'll be back here anytime soon, but it's nice to know that he's in positive spirits and working hard and maybe even watching tonight. So
Yeah,
there's an update. And I'm probably going to skip the sign discussion.
okay.
He's tentatively accepted the invitation to next week's work session. So,
Okay.
you sure you want to leave, Scott? It's just getting good.
You guys don't need me for sign.
Okay, the last item on the agenda is case number 22-023. This is a public hearing on a zoning ordinance amendment, and Tricia, if you could lead us into that?
Yes. So, we are proposing a brand new sign code. And this is Article 16 of the Walker zoning ordinance. You were provided with the draft of the ordinance and also the existing language that we have right now. And you'll notice that some areas were highlighted that pertain to other sections within the ordinance. And that's because we are, as you know, we're working on updating the whole entire zoning ordinance. And so some of those sections that are referenced in the existing section of the sign code could change. And our planning consultant has sort of the skeleton of our new zoning ordinance outlined. And so some of these areas that he's highlighted in here are places where it doesn't reference those sections in the new or in the existing sign ordinance. But those are just new sections that it will eventually reference when we have the whole thing put together. So I took this picture. Does anybody know where this is? Who knows where this is?
Alpine and 4 Mile.
Yeah.
Yep.
Where we have kind of a hodgepodge of all sorts of different good signs here. Yeah. So I thought this would be a good little cover for my presentation. So the question of like, why are we doing this right now? Why aren't we doing this with the overall zoning ordinance update with the whole thing? And so main reason for that is because of the Reed versus Gilbert case that was at the Supreme Court. And the outcome was that signs need to be neutral. So this Reed versus Gilbert case was out of Arizona, and it was a church that had some off-premise signs for their religious services, and it had their particular zoning ordinance had stricter regulations for off-premise signage as it pertained to religious services than it did for other things. And so the outcome of that case is causing a lot of communities to have to update their sign ordinances. So this happened in 2015, and here we are 2022, and it's just starting to affect us. The reason why is because we had an application for a billboard right out in front of Flexco, and the other application was actually in that same big, super old non-conforming billboard that I just showed you on Alpine, the alterations place, and now I think they have a psychic there, or maybe they have a salon of some sort. Anyway, so they applied for those 2 building permits for these digital billboards, and the one was turned down because it wasn't the zoning wasn't in place for us to allow for a digital billboard there. As you know, our ordinance currently allows them to be in industrial districts along the highway. And in our zoning ordinance, they're referred to as billboards. So the reason why the other billboard in front of Flexco was denied was because it was closer than what the distance parameters were in the current zoning ordinance. You have to be a certain number of feet away from another existing billboard. I think it's 2,000 feet. And so it didn't comply with that. So building permits were not issued. Next thing you know, we're getting served with some court papers for in federal court. So the plaintiff cited that our ordinance violates the First Amendment, free speech. And so we ended up settling, knowing that we were going to have to update our sign code so that it was content neutral. And I'll get into what that means in just a second. But we ended up settling with this billboard company to allow them to put the billboard in front of Flexco, a digital billboard. So you guys have probably seen that big billboard over there on the highway. It started going up a couple months ago. And so we want to avoid future lawsuits, so that's why we're doing our sign code now instead of in the rest of the zoning ordinance update. So when I keep using these words, content neutrality, so when we're talking about the sign content, we're talking about the message on the sign. So you have the structure of the sign, whatever the message is, whether it's support for a political candidate or a sign that says now hiring or a sign that has the name of a business, that's what the content is. And so if you have to read the sign to determine what type of sign it is, so the way our ordinance is written now, we've got political signs, we've got real estate signs, we've got construction signs, we've got temporary special event signs, all that stuff. So when your ordinance is content neutral, you're not looking at the message of the sign when you're applying the regulations. You're only regulating based on size, quantity, location when you move to a content neutral zoning ordinance. So that's kind of a hard thing to grasp when you're first trying to figure out, okay, how can we regulate signs if we're not looking at what the message is on it? Certain types of signs are known to be, you know, more notorious for putting in signs like in the right of way, or putting out signs that are off premise and thus illegal according to our ordinance. So instead, we're regulating just based on those factors that aren't related to the content or the message that's on the sign. So I thought you would enjoy this.
There it is.
So the proposed sign ordinance, I'm not going to go through all the changes specifically, but I assume that you've read this ordinance in its entirety so that you can make a sound decision tonight. But I just want to highlight some of the ways that this new ordinance is vastly different from our old ordinance. So the first thing is that the new ordinance is user-friendly. When I say user, I'm talking about the person who has to interpret the ordinance and the person who has to use it because maybe they work for a sign company or maybe they own a business and they want to figure out what they're allowed to have for signage. So our consultant put together that really nice table that shows all the zoning districts and the types of signs that are allowed and how many and how big. And so you have a maximum area, a maximum number, maximum setback, maximum height. And so all we have to do now is look right at this table and boom, there's no like, well, we should probably reference this other section. So, you know, we're covering all the bases. It's all right here in this table. And then he's also provided some really great graphics that give examples. So like we always have all these terms in our ordinance that you don't really necessarily know what it is unless maybe you saw a picture. For me, that's huge because I like to know. When I see a picture that confirms whether or not it conforms to like what I'm picturing. So that's going to be something that's really helpful in the future. So these things are called static reader boards. If you're not familiar with sign types and you're a business owner and you just want to put up a sign to advertise this or that and it's temporary, you don't know that this is called a static reader board or a changeable copy reader board. And so this just gives a nice example of, hey, this is what we're talking about. So here's a little snapshot of this table. So again, all the signs are regulated based on what kind of sign they are. So for freestanding signs, we're talking about monument signs. We're talking about signs previously referred to as political signs, or signs that are previously referred to as real estate signs, pole signs, all that. And then we also have wall signs, window signs, and projecting signs. So they're regulated by the type of sign they are, not by their message. And then the other thing that he gave us is like, how do you measure sign area? So this table gives you what the area maximum can be. And then, you know, this really nice graphic shows you how to measure it. So essentially you're just drawing a box around any kind of shape. And that makes it super simple to anyone using it. So the other thing is that obviously the new sign ordinance is content neutral. And so as I already stated, all the regulations are now in terms of sign quantity, permitted locations, size, shape, static or electronic, permanent or temporary. And we no longer call them the type of sign that we've been calling them pretty much our whole lives. So we're just calling them signs now. And then another thing we've done is we've reduced some of the regulation. So our current ordinance requires us to have people pull permits for some temporary signs. When people want to do now hiring signs, it became so burdensome to keep track of and issue these temporary sign permits and then follow up with, okay, it's been up for 14 days. Do we have to go out there to look to see if it's down? And so with the now hiring signs right now, they're kind of everywhere. And so, we're like, how awful would it be if we just didn't require a permit for them? Because we know in a lot of circumstances, people are going to be putting up signs whether they have a permit or not. And so I use this, you don't need a permit for political signs, but I use this picture as an example because now instead of saying political signs, you get to have this many and, they can only be up for so many days before the election and so many days after the election or whatever. Now we just say you can have signs in your yard. And this is how big and this is how many. And that's it. So that's kind of a different thing to wrap your mind around in terms of regulation. And I think a lot of times your first thought might be, are we just going to have crazy amounts of temporary signs, stick in the ground signs all over the place? Mark looks like he's falling asleep. So we don't think it's going to be an issue, but we'll see, and if some of the major policy type changes that we've put into this new ordinance is not working out, we can always revisit it in a year and make changes if we need to. So the last thing is that it's been updated for today's sign technology. There's a lot more LED signs out there. There's a lot more electronic message centers out there. And really that is the solution for people that constantly want to have all these different temporary signs at their business. You get an electronic message board and you can change your message whenever you need to. So our regulations have been updated so that, your specific movements or specific brightness in an LED sign it is limited. So lastly, we've added, because we can't say billboard, because our billboard our definition of billboard anyway in our current ordinance is kind of what we were sued over, because it was called off-premise and it talked about the content of the sign specifically. So instead of calling them billboards, now we just call them large off-premise freestanding signs. And so we've created this overlay that's along I-96 and US 131 that allows for these large off-premise freestanding signs. So a lot of this stuff is still the same. It's for industrial zoned areas within 100 foot of the highway right-of-way. It replaces all the billboard regulations without using the word billboard. And one new piece to this is that it allows large off-premise signs, formerly known as billboards, to be digital. So that's something that we have not allowed in the past. But we know that the technology is trending in that direction. And we've already had some inquiries and applications actually for upgrading some existing billboards to LED or digital. So that's the sign ordinance in a nutshell. And I feel like I talked about it too long, but it was a really big deal when we were going through and trying to figure out how are we going to do this? How do you regulate signs without looking at the message? But our consultant and Jeff Sluggett, our attorney, they did a really good job in working with us and trying to implement some of the things that they've seen or they've worked with in other communities that's been working out, so.
My question, just, so the party store down at the end of Remembrance,
Mhm.
it has windows that you can't see through because there's so many signs. Are they out of, if this gets passed, are they out of compliance?
So you're allowed to have window signs and
Percent according to that chart.
what is it?
25% of the window?
Of the coverage of the window? Yeah, so, you might see some nonconformities as a result of the new ordinance. So, I think that's pretty typical when you make this big of a change. And when you have a lot of zoning ordinance changes, you're gonna have some places that could be created non-conforming. Does that mean we're gonna go out there and tell them to get rid of their signage, or we're gonna calculate their coverage? Probably not, but going forward, that's what we'll stick to what's in this ordinance.
So if there was a complaint registered, you'd probably go and try to enforce it.
Yep.
There is a section in here though that does reference that if it's existing, it can stay existing. You just can't change it structurally or update it. So they'd have to leave what's there. They can't reapply a new sticker for the new season's deal.
So beer prices go off there.
They gotta stay where they're at if they want that sticker.
Why didn't you use the term legal non-conforming as opposed to just non-conforming?
I feel like we had that conversation. Are you talking about that last section?
Well, just the example that Mark gave, just because they have signs plastered all over the window and there's really nowhere to see through, if that it was legal to do that before, that's one thing, but if it wasn't ever legal for them to do that,
Yeah, you're right, Terry. So I remember calling this out in one of the renditions of the ordinance as we were reviewing it and giving our comments. And I feel like I said we should have the word lawful or legal in there. A lawful non-conforming sign may be continued, because not all non-conforming signs are lawful. Because maybe they just went up without a permit, or they were changed without a permit. But I can put that in there.
so just as a consideration, and maybe there's a good explanation why that's just using
You
non-conforming.
would certainly open that up to a lot of people that are out there that maybe don't know that they have that. So you'd be subjecting them to having to then become, let's say, compliant. So I wouldn't support that for that reason. But I don't think, what are we looking for from us tonight?
So we are looking for a recommendation to the city commission.
You want a public hearing? Open, close?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, right, yeah, at some point we'll do that. But,
Whatever you want.
yeah.
Say the word.
Well, maybe we should open the public hearing.
You know, open, close it, and then have discussion.
Yeah,
Make a motion to open the public hearing.
got a motion?
Second.
Motion by Jason, supported by Scott, to open the public hearing on the consideration of the zoning ordinance sign amendments.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
A motion by Jason, supported by Scott, to close the public hearing, given that there's no one else in the building or in the audience offering comment.
Hopefully there's no one in the building, aside
I'll-
from,
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. A couple other questions. What used to be, am I to, in looking at this, a freestanding sign, if you have a direct, what we've called directional sign before, that's considered a freestanding sign? And so, it looks like you're allotted X amount of square feet, and if you want to divvy up some of that for directional signs, you may. Or even in the commercial district, I think there's allowance for signs located along driveways. So those are probably what used to be called directional signs.
Yes. Yep.
How about what used to be called political signs or non-commercial signs? Are those freestanding signs?
Those might be, I think those are considered temporary signs. So,
Wow.
hold on, Terry.
Well, it makes sense that you're calling them temporary signs. Although if they stay up 365 days, then they're considered a permanent sign, and then they've got a problem then.
Yep. So the section that applies to, it's part A. So freestanding signs up to 24 square feet in area and 6 feet in height shall be permitted in any of the following circumstances. So you have, accessory to a non-residential use, located within a general common element, located within a commonly accessible area of multi-unit complex. And then you have signs that meet one of the circumstances in subsections 1 through 3, while also being visible from a public road, maybe up to 48 square feet. But only one permitted per lot.
Oh, only one per lot?
Of 48 square feet.
Okay, all right. This is very business friendly, because businesses, they can have a temporary sign up basically throughout the year. It's another freestanding sign in effect.
Yep.
And,
So in part 16.03, the permit process, it adds, so under part 5, temporary signs shall not require a permit in any zoning district,
yeah,
provided that the following standards are met. So it gives the parameters for the number of signs on any given lot at any time. So 6 is probably gonna be your times around an election when there could be a lot of political signs on a lot.
How do you regulate that though? And the first 6 come in there and they're fine, but then what happens to number 7? Who
Well-
regulates who number 7 wants?
So the property owner, so the ordinance, the code enforcement officer would, like if she gets a complaint, she would go out and say, you have to remove one of your signs. And they can pick which one they want to remove.
I would say Joe has a suggestion.
That'd be easy to do. So if we okay this, then it goes to the city commission for final approval. And you basically spent a lot of time on this. And
Yes.
you're recommending we pass this, it's been well thought out. Is that what you're telling us?
Yep, so this code has been tossed around. We started talking about this when we got sued, which was, I'm gonna say like, I don't remember exactly when that was. Maybe it was last fall, like late last fall. And then shortly after that, we formed the zoning ordinance update subcommittee. And so it might have been like our second or third meeting where we talked about, and Scott's on the subcommittee, where we brought this ordinance to them after we'd had a lot of deliberation with our planning consultant and Jeff Sluggett and staff and, Megan Gorby, our code enforcement officer, she was involved in the process also. So then we also received some recommendations from our zoning ordinance subcommittee to make a few changes in here. And then once we incorporated all of the comments and all the recommendations, we brought it to the ordinance committee. So those are the meeting minutes and my memo that you see in the packet from June 27th. So the ordinance committee gave the recommendation to go ahead and put it on the planning commission agenda for their review. It's not an easy one to just look at and go, cool, I'm good with it. So if you,
Well, the easy thing is to, go ahead and pass the buck along here, but I think you need to go slow, and there's a lot of changes here and stuff, but I'd be in favor of, you've spent a lot of time with it, recommending it, passing it on.
But if you're not at a comfort level where you think you want to have a little bit more time to digest what you've got in here, you can certainly table it, and this isn't something that is that you really want to rush through without feeling 100% comfortable with it.
I think somebody's already done that.
We
before it gets to
have.
us. That's what, do I understand the whole thing? No. It's a little overwhelming, to be honest.
It is. It's very over, especially when it comes to
That's why I'm
signs.
relying on you.
I have some very strong opinions on being a no on this one, so. Well, Joe appears to be a yes.
Okay. Well,
Again, the only reason we're bringing this forward now versus with the rest of the package is because we kind of want to not get sued in the future. But if there's language in this ordinance that you're not comfortable with and you'd like to make some suggestions for some wording changes, or maybe you've got some ideas for something else, we need to hear that, and we want to hear that so that we can try to incorporate your recommendations.
okay. Well, let's start with Scott. Come down. What do you, are there any parts of that cause you to have some question on?
Yeah, generally I think it's a really good ordinance, but the whole issue with the temporary signs just kind of, I think some of that just needs to be cleaned up a little bit, as Jason was alluding to. So maybe we kind of, and I understand, wanting something in place for to prevent future lawsuits, but sometimes you may be compounding a problem or maybe adding to a problem by, trying to prevent another one, so to speak. So, I think a couple things need to be cleaned up here.
Scott, can you use your mic?
Sorry.
Do you have anything specific that you wanted to give direction on?
Yeah, just like the temporary signs, that 16.03 subsection 5. I think it says no more than 6 temporary signs are allowed. I think that's a good solution, but as we've discussed here, I think there's loopholes and ways that some of these businesses may try to get around that, and I'm not sure if I can offer a better solution at this point necessarily, but that's in particular the biggest thing here that I think may need more attention.
I'll add to that. Are you all set, Scott? Mm-hmm. So with that, on the temporary signs, I think we need to call out a little bit, either on the political side of it, which is really dangerous these days, but we have a couple landowners that are in town that specifically allow, for quite a few political signs to go on their property, and they're big properties, and they have multiple ones, and that's why we start seeing them pop up on certain corners and on certain stretches of land there. So if we're going to get into this, then we probably should maybe call something out on that, or say that that doesn't necessarily fit within these ordinances. I was told, and I'm not sure at what stage, but the political signs have a very limited time that they can be up. Meaning they can only go up at a certain time frame in a political season, and then have to be removed within a certain time frame. And I don't recall if that was a local or if that was more of a state elections type of law. But having had to pull signs and put signs up for political, I always had to do it in certain time frames, and I'm not quite certain where that came from, but I wonder if that should be referenced in here, that political signs are per this ordinance or this code that comes from this body, something like that. So I think we need to clean up with that. I don't have any problem with the charts in here and in terms of sizes and that kind of stuff. The prohibited signs, I don't like some of them. It looks like B, we're getting rid of the ones that are on the motion type things, where the fan guy and that kind of stuff. It's probably on purpose. I don't know if that's the right move. They don't bother me. They bother some, I suppose. But I am usually not in favor of creating an ordinance to get rid of something that may be a good marketing tool for somebody. The other thing is a utility pole or a light pole. My business, we use a pole sign that's on a light, so I would not want to vote that out, even though I'm not located in Walker with my business. But I could see where you would have, street lights or something like that, where we might advertise City of Walker on the street light, and that might be a year-round type of thing, which now would not work. So I think we'd want to be specific, or for me, I would want to pull that off. Not everybody would agree with me on that, I'm sure. But I have more of the problem with the prohibited signs. But the rest of it seemed fine in terms of the table and why we're creating and doing that. I'm certainly on board with that. So that's where I'm at. So right now I'm no, because of those reasons.
Can I just offer some clarification on that light pole or utility pole thing? So those are, so part B where it says any sign erected on a tree, utility pole, light pole, except signs erected by a government agency or authority, those would prevent people from sticking up those, happy window cleaning onto, like a telephone pole. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Is that what you were?
I agree with you, but that's not where my head was at in terms of, those aren't the ones. I'm thinking more on the legitimate ones that I would want to continue to have.
Okay.
In our particular case, because of where we locate our business, we have a lot of signs that need to help people get to, because we have to go through a residential neighborhood to get to a commercial neighborhood, which is a little unusual, but that's the way ours is. So in our case, having signage on light pole or utility pole makes a tremendous difference in terms of wayfinding and that sort of stuff.
I mean, if it's a lawful thing, like on a private, well, I guess I guess I can't picture what you're describing, but picture I don't know if you're familiar with Easttown and how some of those old utility poles, they have 8 billion staples in them. From people that...
Yeah, and I'm completely the opposite direction on where you're going with that. I agree with what you're saying there in terms of just littering a utility pole with that. I get that. I'm talking more about directional wayfinding and those kinds of things.
Okay.
This is so it's just saying you can't do it, period. And I would not want that to be that specific. But I understand what you're referencing there, and I agree with what you're saying there. We're having this conversation because what's written is so bland.
Okay. So we need to make it more clear as to, maybe we can provide a graphic that shows what that looks like to make it a little bit more clear.
What's the difference between B and D on the prohibited signs?
I guess, so if you had, let's say you had a business that, so we could use this for an example, because I think this thing is projecting into the right of way. So, you've got the right of way line here, right? And if you have a sign that's hanging over that, then that's what that would be.
Okay.
So that's a B or a D or a both?
Oh, that would be D.
D, okay.
So B would be like if somebody stapled, a sign that said Terry's window cleaning, or, Joe's moving service.
Well, that wouldn't be a freestanding sign, would it?
I don't think it would be called a freestanding sign. It would be, a temporary sign, because it wouldn't be permanently anchored to the ground.
Well, I'll offer my 2 cents worth on this. Yeah, the temporary signs, I think, is, if those could be used for what we traditionally considered as political signs, you're looking at, in some of these residential zone districts, up to 36 square feet, and allowing for 6 of them on a lot at a given time. Oh my gosh. It's bad enough for the little 2.5, 3 square foot signs that you generally see in a residential area. You're talking about 6 times that. And that's at 18 square feet. It's 12 times it if you get 36. So if you get 36 square foot signs on a property, on a residential property less than 1 acre, and it could be left up basically 365 days a year.
364.
Well, yeah, 364. So, I think that's an unintended consequence that you can avoid by just thinking that through. In terms of I think there have been some recent court cases that have taken place that might take the edge off from how extreme one has to go to meet with the Gilbert case. And I don't know if you've got a city attorney reviewing this, I would presume that he's aware of those and maybe has brought that into the conversation.
Are you referring to, not a somewhat recent one related to off-premise and
I
like
think
those
so.
words?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So we're allowed to say off-premise.
yep. I don't know. My biggest angst here is the temporary signs. I think this is to be up 364 days a year, to have as many as 6 on a property, and you're talking about whether it's 18 square feet or 36 square feet, those are huge signs, and on a residential property, that could extend across your entire front of your little property. And, I think free speech is one thing, but I think that's, you've gotta get a balance. And, because especially when you allow for a time period of that long, you gotta get a balance there, and you can't necessarily, expect that after the, election's over with, the people are gonna take them down, because they can have them up 364 days a year.
Take it down for a day and then it can go back up.
Well, I think there's some part of it, you have to have it down for 30 days, and then before you can put it back up again. I think there's a provision in there, something to that effect. But even then, that still leaves 11 out of 12 months a year where you could have that many. And I could see people, so allowing people free speech, I think that's good. But reasonable standards on how large that is, I think it's well worth taking another look at that and scaling that down.
Are you saying that maybe we should have a maximum size? So like maximum size of any one sign? Like if somebody wants, are you saying that somebody could take the 36 square feet and just put that all in one sign?
Oh, yeah.
And so we should probably have something in here saying that no one sign shall exceed X square feet. If they're allowed 6, that would mean.
We're talking about yard signs, so we're talking
Well,
about.
I'm thinking a residential
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
Because I think in most communities, there's allowance for a larger sign in a commercial area than you would for a residential area.
What are those, about a foot? Is that what most of them are? You stick them in the ground?
Yeah, and it sounds like under this ordinance, those would be considered temporary signs, requiring no permit, could be up as much as 364 days during a year. I just think that's, it could have some unintended consequences.
Yeah,
So
I hear
scale
you.
them down right up front so that you don't run into those big problems.
Of course, you gotta mow the grass around them too.
Well,
Be practical.
that may make it, pick them up and move them and,
Yeah.
keep them cut.
I hear you.
But, Mark?
I don't think I can add anything. I think the temporary, sounds like it's not really temporary if you can stay up the whole year. So, I think we need another shot at it.
Okay.
Well, you guys have worked hard on this. You've had a lot of meetings already. I guess I can't add too much either.
Well, there's a lot of different perspectives, as you guys have shown, and I wasn't a huge fan of the whole 360 for no more than 365 days, and that whole piece might sound like enforcement nightmare, but it might not be. And we just don't know until we say, okay, here's the new code.
Well, if you have, it won't be an enforcement problem because everybody will be, if they put up 6 there and leave them there basically throughout the year and maybe take it down for one day and have it for 30 days and then put it back up.
Yeah.
It won't be an enforcement issue. I think the way this is set up, it's reducing any enforcement activity, but it's a wild west that, I think the more reasonable allowance can be made and still be content neutral and preserve the natural beauty of the community.
What do you think would be a reasonable reduction?
I just think back on the size of the signs most signs that are in a residential area are around 3.5, 4 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
That would seem to be sufficient.
So you're not going to opt for a little larger than that?
Yeah.
Only because I put up a sign, actually in Joe's yard, that
And that's where, again, when we say that there's allow up to 6, so 6 times whatever that allowance is. And how that might set out. So maybe at 10 square feet, 6 times 10, it's 60 square feet of sign. Maybe
It's a
that.
lot. I mean,
Yeah.
then it becomes a homeowner. Obviously, we did it with Joe's
Yeah.
permission, but.
So that's where, I can't offer really a hard and fast what would be best, but I think moderating that allowance for a given sign, I think would be helpful, especially in the residential area. In the commercial area, those 6 signs that you allow for freestanding are most likely want to be used as temporary signs to promote the business. And I guess I would look for clarification there. Is that six per lot or 6 per tenant in a multi-tenant building?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we need some more clarification on that for commercial when it comes to multi-tenant.
And another thing that just comes to mind too is allowance for up to 25% of the window area. Well, is that 25% of the window area on the entire building? Or is it I think that 25 per side of the building might be a way to go, because otherwise you could have somebody that has a lot of windows on the back and or on the front.
I got you.
And they're gonna just plaster those and then leave the other ones.
A car dealer would be notorious for that. Say they're trying to run a huge sale, they might do those 1 foot by 2 foot signs that say sale, and they might try to stack 30 of them in the right of way that draw a lot of attention.
Yeah.
You know, so there's definitely the commercial thing, and then they might turn around and say, well, we've got glass all the way around because the car dealers are always glass.
Yeah, and then they devote the whole front wall of the building
On the glass.
as one big sign.
Yeah, there's definitely some things I think need to get worked out.
We had an example where we had an inquiry about, and it was one of the most recent buildings that has gone up in the Walker View that Jason may or may not have been involved in. Well, maybe actually
I built that.
it's not Flexco, it's the one right next to it.
Yes.
That was you guys? Okay. So they have a really, really big window there, and they asked if they could put their big Falcon, as window decals. And our current ordinance doesn't have any regulation of window signs. So I think we brought that up as a discussion point when we were talking about, signs that could be in the window and what our regulation would be. And so you see in the industrial districts, the maximum area is 100%. So they're like perforated window decals, so you can still get some light through the window. But we should probably, clarify the coverage, and coverage of what? Like the window pane, coverage of the size of the wall, and do the decals or in window coverings need to be perforated so that light still goes through. So I think that's a good point.
Slightly off topic on that, there was discussion on that at the planning commission when that one went through.
Oh, really?
I was out of the room, so I don't know the exact, I think there was a size that they were told they could do
Okay.
as part of their, approval package.
Yeah, they still haven't come out and asked for it yet. But yeah, I get an inquiry every so often. Like, when are you just gonna put that sign up?
So you're in charge of this sign stuff. You're gonna,
I review the applications that come in for signs. And then Megan is the enforcer when there's a sign out there that might be illegal, or, maybe it went up without a permit or whatever. But, you know, so when you see that this looks like the Wild West in our, like when it comes to temporary signs, we don't have a huge problem. And so that's one of the reasons why Megan is really involved in this project, is because, you know, she's on the enforcement end of things. And what does she get complaints on? I would say that the biggest temporary, the biggest problem, I guess you could say, in quotes, of temporary signs we have are the now hiring signs. And you could look at that in a number of different ways. You know, they're beneficial, they're needed, people want to advertise that they're hiring, but then we've got these regulations on the number of signs you can have. So at any given time, you drive by Abraham and Sons, and they have 6 temporary signs out there. And so it's hard to say that we're having a really bad problem with political signs. We've got a couple of problem children, I think, out there that really, really love their political candidate and want to support them throughout the year, even when they're not a political candidate. And so, you know, do we design an ordinance that prevents one situation because we have a specific situation, or do we design an ordinance that keeps the number to, you know, whatever the maximum is, and you know, regulate that way? So all of your comments are valid. I think they're all you know, things that we should take another look at. And so yeah, I mean, I'm gonna, so after, I'm tired, sorry.
I'm glad I don't have your job.
After tonight's meeting, because I assume you're gonna table this, which I would feel better if you did, given the number of things that you're not super comfortable with. We'll go back to our consultant and our and Jeff Sluggett, and we'll sit with our staff working group and probably go back to the zoning ordinance subcommittee and perhaps the ordinance committee. Does that sound like a good path forward?
Yeah, sure.
And then, like, if you guys come up with any other comments or questions or recommendations after tonight's meeting that you think we should address in the draft here, just email them to me, and then we'll make it part of the discussion.
So do we want to offer a motion then to
Second.
table?
Oh, to adjourn. I'm adjourning here. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I take that back.
Okay, we got a motion by Jason, supported by Mark, to
Yeah.
table action on proposed zoning ordinance amendments on signs. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. So we're recommending tabling and taking into account some of the comments that have been offered. The comments have been offered this evening.
Perfect. So,
Up north, there's a number of temporary signs, they raise their garage door.
what's that?
They raise their garage door and there's a temporary sign in there. I assume it's because someone, it's a political sign.
Raise the garage door.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the political signs are the ones that, like, those especially, we're looking at them in terms of content.
Your governor is an idiot. Now, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's over the line. Come on.
Well, you know, this also gets into
50%
profanity.
say otherwise, so don't
say that,
Joe.
You know, somebody can say, for example, the F word on a sign in their yard, and we can't look at it like that's
I would think you
that's a
should. I
violation.
would think you should do that. I would think like the N word and stuff. I think you should have the right to do that. That's, yeah.
So this is a really, really hard like, make a good, because, once you feel like, great, we're content neutral, we're doing good, following the Supreme Court, in the case law that's out there, and then you get, somebody wanting to make their garage door an entire sign with whatever speech they want to have on there, and we technically cannot limit the speech of, what people want to say. So it's a tough one.
Yeah, well, I think going in that direction, I think there's some concepts here that seem to be a good way to approach it. It's just working out some of the details as far as looking at their application and what would this mean.
Yep.
Well, the F word and the N word should be obsolete. Come on, that's easy. Most of us agree on that.
I think, in some of these circumstances, I think you're gonna see neighbors come together when, if there's a really, really offensive sign out there, because it's happened in a lot of communities where, people are saying things like, let's go Brandon, and, but using the word,
They use the word.
right, the real words.
Yeah. I think you'll see some neighbors coming together to find a solution to the issue, and not, the city doesn't even have to get involved. Yep.
That's a good way to do it.
What's our agenda look like next time around?
I think we're gonna have Lewis Farms. I'm not totally sure though, because they were supposed to submit a resubmittal today and they didn't. So if we don't have Lewis Farms again, we'll have a consumers substation, and that's it. I don't wanna say this out loud.
Substation, what's that?
It's like, you know where that water tower is over on 4 Mile? Right next to that Great Lakes Capitol building that went up?
Yeah.
So right in between the water tower and the Great Lakes Capitol building, there's a property owned by consumers, and they'll have like their, I don't even know how to describe it, giant metal things.
They don't have enough power for that particular area, so they gotta bring in some stuff.
Would that just be a courtesy review, because consumers have kind of rights to do whatever they want?
They are considered an essential public service, so they can go in any district, and they are exempt from site plan review, except in residential districts. And we've made the interpretation that, because like our zoning ordinance has a definition for residential, and it includes like, the A, SA, and, all those other residential districts, but it also says like 5 and PA, and I'm like, what are those? Because we don't have those. But it does not include AA. But we all can make the interpretation that AA is a residential district. So, I mean, it is kind of a courtesy, but, because they're essential, but we're,
Are we meeting with the Westtown people again?
so that's next week.
Okay.
You guys all look really tired.
All right. So,
Motion to adjourn.
all right. We're adjourned. Thanks.
Still here though.